Talofa, hello Olgera, a warm welcome to the Pacific Way. It goes without saying that food is important to us all. Its value is reflected in our daily consumption, our celebration, and it's even used as an art form. At its very essence, we depend on food for survival. Ensuring a sustainable food supply in the face of escalating global population growth and climate change continues to pose a great challenge. In the search for possible solutions to this growing problem, some circles have turned their attention to GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. However, others strongly oppose the idea. In this story, we follow two students on a quest to find out more about GMOs and discover why they remain wrapped in controversy.
Genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, are organisms that have been transformed by the insertion of genes from another species. An example of this would be crops that have had a piece of foreign genetic material inserted into its plant genome. GMOs are controversial, but like anything, you have got to try and find out more information. And the first thing to do is to look at what exactly is GMO. And for this, we turn to these two people. Lithe and Karnal are two students studying at the University of the South Pacific, and they have an important assignment. Their first source of information was from Professor Anand Tyagi at the University of the South Pacific in Suva, Fiji. Professor Tyagi is a professor with the Department of Biology within the Faculty of Science.
First of all, let me describe what are genetically modified organisms. Genetically engineered organisms are called transgenic organisms. Transgenic organisms are often created for experimental studies, but an important application is the development of improved varieties of domesticated animals and crop plants, in which case a transgenic organism is called a genetically modified organism, or GMO.
Professor Tyagi feels that there are benefits to GMOs.
Land is limited. We have to grow the food in land. So if the land is limited, we have to have the varieties or animals which we are domesticating. They can produce higher milk, high meat, number of eggs, and high grain yield, fodder yield. This is all required. And the potential of GMO or GMOs is actually enormous in developing countries as compared to developed countries. However, the developed countries are taking the lead, and many of the developing countries are still very shy to use some of the genetically modified organisms, particularly the plant varieties which are very high yielding as compared to locally existing varieties of several crop species or crop plants. The main advantage would be, one, in case of the plants is higher yield, the quality. You might have heard the name of golden rice. Those people unfortunately don't have access to fruits, cannot take enough carotene. This particular variety of rice has carotene in its grains and can be consumed, will protect your eyes and give you the glowing skin, because the way the vitamin A acts in our body is very important for us. Apart from that, the higher food production will alleviate the problem of hunger all over the world. Lucky we are in the Pacific, there is no shortage of food as yet. But the rate at which the human population is multiplying in these small island countries is quite high. It's somewhere between 2.8 to 3%. Therefore, it is very important to adapt and use genetically modified crop plants for higher yield, secure crops, and better quality.
On the issue of food security, Professor Tyagi says there are advantages.
With regard to the food security, if we have secure crops, for example, the crops are not being harmed by diseases, insects or pests, they will certainly produce higher yield as compared to those varieties which are susceptible to all diseases, insects, pests or some other parasites. Therefore, the main advantages for all the developing countries will be the food security in terms of higher production, more food for the population. Nobody will go hungry if we have better varieties of plants, better breeds of animals which can produce more milk, more meat, more egg, and higher grain yield, fodder for our animals. The food security is very important for developing countries. When it runs,
Lide and Kano found that Professor Tyagi was pro-GMO, so they decided to seek someone who was not so enthusiastic about GMOs. Sukhaveti Nomomo of Fiji, a certified organic farmer, counters Professor Tyagi, saying that food security issues will not be solved by GMOs.
I'll go back to the history of GMO, and the background of GMO. When GMO was brought, it was brought because there was a belief that there was shortage of food in the world. But the international bodies did their own studies, and they found it was not shortage. It was the lack of distribution and the access to it. And I think that happens too in the Pacific. Government may be thinking of introducing GMOs so that it'll curb that, or it'll solve the solution of inadequacy of food. But I don't think so. We need education. People should be educated. We don't educate people when they are dumb. They should be educated from an young age.
Sukhaveti advocates that organic farming is the way to go from the mere fact that it is healthy and free of chemicals.
Organic farming is something to Pacific Islanders. It's like traditional farming. Traditional farming is farming technique that is passed over the generations. But when it comes to talking organic farming, it is the certification. And the benefits, when you talk certification, the certification so that it is recognized when it comes to local markets and recognized at exports. The benefits of organic is one, the quality of food that you eat. There's freshness in it. There's a short distance to travel to buy local foods that is organic. The taste, because of no chemical, the taste, you can just understand it by the soil fertility, it goes into the plant. And a plant has the fruit or the vegetable that you eat. Secondly, the health and safety. When we talk organic, we are committed to not using chemicals. So there's just safety there. And on top of that, that is all the inspection, regular inspection for safety. That inspection ends to your having an annual certification. To that, with health safety, is the nutrition value. The nutrition value of the commodity of the plant is high. There is no chemical residue. You know that there has been research. Residue of chemicals on crops has been found on children overseas, in America for one. Also, the small children, they eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, and we won't worry about them with food. Also, our farmers, with organic farming, they won't use a lot of chemicals. It has been found in studies that out of every 6 farmers, 1 will get cancer it is the use of synthetic fertilizer and pesticide.
Having got both sides of the story, Lithe and Kanal decided to go and see the Chief Executive Officer of the Consumer Council of Fiji, Pramila Kumar, to see if there are any legislation in Fiji addressing the issue of GMOs.
In terms of biosafety and GMOs, there is no specific legislation, but I understand there is a national biosafety framework that's being developed, and there is some work going on right now in developing a legislation of that nature that will deal with GMOs and LMOs. But there are other pieces of legislation that can be used when the issue of GMOs arises. For example, the food safety regulation has got a very specific section that talks about labeling of food items. And if a product contains GMO, then the trader, the manufacturer, or the wholesaler got to declare that this particular product contains GMO.
The CEO offers good advice to consumers encountering GMOs for the first time.
Well, if they see a product that contains GMO, the label says it has GMO, then first of all I applaud the manufacturer for declaring that this product contains GMO. And because the information there says that it has got GMO, then again the consumer can make an informed decision whether to buy that product or not to buy that product. That choice is left to the consumer. Now, consumer has to make an informed decision based on the current literature on GMOs. There is right now precautionary principle is being used to safeguard the interest of the communities, that is the public health, as well as the environment.
Having received important information from the Consumer Council of Fiji, the two students decided that a visit to the Department of Environment would be appropriate to find out from the department what biosafety frameworks are in place that will protect the country from GMOs and living modified organisms, or LMOs, which are plants that can be genetically fertilized or planted.
Actually, when you talk about the biosafety framework, or whether it's a legislative framework or administrative framework, here we are trying to put in place some form of institutional arrangements or legal arrangements whereby we can put in place the measures and controls that I had mentioned, whereby we can have our natural biodiversity be protected. Now, what this would involve, the framework will outline what needs to be what measures needs to be put in place. For example, there will need to be a policy on biosafety, and again there would be a need for legislations. So besides the policy, there would be a need for a legislation to be put in place, so that various authorities can monitor the entry of any LMOs or GMOs into the country. And again, with the framework, it will need to outline the administration system that we need to put in place, like what government departments would be involved, NGOs, industries would be involved in this, in keeping our biosafety program a success. Again, when we look at enforcement, the framework will put in place some enforcement mechanisms whereby when we have a legislation in place or policy, the enforcement or the implementations of these policies and legislations will be effective. And again, monitoring. We need to monitor these mechanisms which we put in place over time, such that the program is sustainable into the future, ensuring that there is progress in the enforcement.
The next stop was the lab of the Center for Pacific Crops and Trees, CPACT, at the Secretariat of the Pacific Community, SPC, where they met with Valerie Tuia, the curator with CPACT, who took them on a little tour of the Gene Bank laboratory before answering some of their questions. Valerie first explains what the center is and the work that it does.
The Center for Pacific Crops and Trees, or the Genetic Resources Laboratory, deals with the plant tissue culture only. So the general functions of the center are to do with the conservation of the Pacific important crop collections for future generations. The center conserves crop collections of taros, bananas, yams, sweet potatoes, etc. And the center also conserves a unique global collection of taros, over 800 accessions, which is the biggest taro collection in the world conserved in tissue culture at the moment.
What is being done in the lab is cloning and not manipulating the genes of the plant, as Valerie explains.
What we're doing in the lab, we are doing cloning, so the genetic material of the plants remain unaltered, whereas in GMO, the genetic material has been altered.
Unlike Professor Tyagi, Valerie does not think that there are any advantages that GMOs will have in the Pacific.
It is difficult to see what advantages GMOs or GM crops bring to Pacific agriculture. Generally, GMOs are considered of value in agriculture, especially if they can solve a problem with a serious pest or a disease problem. Okay, and therefore impact on the significantly on the food security and income generation. If a serious pest or a disease problem was to affect crop yield of a major crop in the Fiji, for example, possibly taro, then perhaps GMO could provide a solution to the problem.
Lithe and Kanal have by now received various viewpoints on the issue of GMOs and are beginning to learn quite a lot about GMOs. They feel that consumers need to be aware of what GMOs are and can only then make an informed decision. This is where Pramila Kumar of the Consumer Council comes in.
Awareness is very crucial because as a consumer you have several rights. One of your rights is right to information, and through awareness raising programs such as this, consumers will be informed about a particular product or of a particular issue. In this particular case, we're talking about GMOs. So they would be aware of this particular issue, and being informed means they'll be making the right choice, because one of the right is right to choose. So they'll be able to choose between a GMO-contained product or GMO-free product. And finally, I would say that consumers' right to safety. So as a consumer, you'll be able to make the right decision whether that product is safe for you or not.
With all of the information the two students now have, it is time to write up their presentation, and they have looked at the positives and the negatives of GMOs. Here is what they've come up with. On the positive side, they have found that with animals there is greater resistance, improved feed efficiency, better yields of meat, eggs and milk, and higher productivity. With crops, there is a greater resistance to diseases, pests and herbicide, increased nutrients and stress tolerance, especially in times of drought. And with the ever increase in the world population, there will need to be enough food to feed everyone. And for society on the whole, GMOs can contribute to increased food security for growing populations. Live and Carnell found that there were negatives, which for them seemed to outweigh the positives of GMOs. The first thing they looked at was the access and intellectual property. Only few companies produce GM seed for GM crops, and as such can dominate and potentially control production of some major food crops. This could lead to major dependence of the lesser developed countries on the developed countries. Tampering with nature and the flow of it is a major concern, as it can be viewed that companies are trying to play God. Labeling of GM food is not compulsory in some countries such as the United States of America, and mixing GM produce with non-GM produce can create difficulties with labeling, especially in identifying and verifying the source of ingredients. The potential threat to humans are through allergies and the transfer of genes that are antibiotic resistant. For the environment, the potential threat is through the unintended transfer of genes to wild or farmed crops through cross-pollination, and also the threat of contaminating highly valued centers of genetic diversity. New developments in GMO technology could be used to meet the interest of rich countries only. Ultimately, the public will decide whether to allow or prohibit the entry of GMOs into Fiji, and if it is allowed, under what restrictions. Raising awareness on GMOs is an integral part of the National Biodiversity Framework so that people can make an informed choice on what they want to farm, but more importantly, what they want to eat. There are great benefits on being a party to the biosafety framework.
The benefit of it is that we become part of that network that is involved in the transboundary movement of these LMOs and GMOs, so that any of these substances that enter our waters, we are having to be informed prior to any entry or transshipment across our waters or even into the country. So that's what we, and also we can benefit from the fact that we can be provided technical and financial assistance to assess the risks there might be, or to study these substances when there are indications that it would be entering our waters or our countries. We can be assisted along that line.
Live and Carnell are now ready to hand in their assignment and make a presentation on their research into GMOs in Fiji.
Hey, so we're finally done.
Yeah.
So all the different information that we have, that we need.
I mean, it's been an interesting journey for us, eh?
It has been. Thank God we got to interview all those people.
Yeah.
They really gave us different perspectives.
You think we'll get a good mark for this assignment?
Well, I hope so. I mean, it was challenging, but I think we did a good job.
Interesting topic, eh? GMOs.
It is. It's very controversial. Makes it more interesting.
But I guess for the people, eh? Everybody.
For everyone.
Yeah.
Yes, because we learned more than what we thought we knew.
Yeah. GMOs. I never thought GMOs would be this interesting.
Same.
Yeah.
I hope you found that story enlightening. Certainly some food for thought there. For more information about the Pacific Way, check us out on YouTube or drop us a line on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, Bye, mi lukem yufala.